That was the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in my life. I had to tell the doctor the truth that I've had a termination. It's either we have to remove your entire uterus or you die.
Hey mamas, welcome back to the Whole Mama Show. I'm your host, Aisha O'Reilly, and we're revealing the untold stories of motherhood. So this episode really is, I think, possibly the most untold story of motherhood. Abortion. I know that word stirs up a lot of emotions for different people. I assure you that it is an experience that so many women, possibly more than we really know, go through, but very few share. You're not the only mama who's had an abortion. Please go ahead and subscribe to my channel and follow me on my social media pages. So before we get into this episode, I would like to issue a trigger warning as my guest story contains some explicit details. Kao is a journalist, a digital content creator, a mother, a sister, and very much an activist for women's rights. This is her story. Hi.
Hello.
Today is the first day. We were just chatting that this is the first time we're actually physically meeting each other. So hello. It's so good to finally meet here.
Feel the same way?
Yeah, so for the benefit of my listeners and my watchers, please can you share who you are, what you do, and who calls you mama?
So my name is Gaopalelwe Phalaetsile, but I go by Gao. And on social media, I'm feminist mommy, well, mommy feminist, because Instagram couldn't give me my feminist mommy handle. I'm a journalist by profession. I'm also a blogger, a content creator, a commentator. Funny enough, people think I only talk about motherhood, but I also comment on things like politics, things that are affecting the country. Who calls me mom is a 9-year-old called Mpile and a 3-year-old called Leo. As feminist mommy, I'm also the co-host of a podcast called Breaking Cycles with Karabo. And essentially, it's really about who we are on social media. It's about talking about conscious and gentle parenting.
I'd love for you to start off just to share with us, how did you become a mom first time?
I was actually 23. Yeah, when I got pregnant with my first child. It tells the story of how unconscious I was when I had a child. So I got pregnant just after graduating university, but I was still studying. You know, you graduate, but you still go back to do something.
Right.
So I was doing a radio course. So I got pregnant with my best friend, who was a guy. I had previously had an abortion because of a rape that I had in my first year of university.
Okay.
And I remember the decision to have a child was not because I was ready to have a child or I wanted to have a child. It was based on trauma. It was I don't want to experience another termination again. And that's how I had my first child. But looking back, I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I think the choice came at the right time, although circumstantial. Funny enough, it's the motherhood that brought the feminism. Before the motherhood, I was not a feminist at all. I was maybe trying to be all, we're feminist without the term.
Yes.
But the minute I became a mom, that's when I was reborn, because I noticed how different the world was for women with children. As much as it was different for me as a childless woman, it was way worse as a woman with a child, especially expecting a boy in Africa. That's when I was like, okay, people are treating me differently. And that's how my motherhood and my feminism journey were born. They literally were born together.
Yeah. My knowledge and, I don't have an experience in abortion.
Yeah.
But my knowledge of it, as with I know a lot of people in society, is very superficial.
Yeah.
So this is the reason why I really wanted to chat to you today, because it is probably the most untold story of motherhood in our society. And so you did mention that before you became a mom for the first time, you did have a termination before. So can you tell us a little bit background behind that decision?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to fill in any gaps here,
No, absolutely. Yeah. So in 2009, I was in my first year of university. And to cut a long story short, I was taken advantage of by someone much older than me.
Yeah.
Ended up getting pregnant. And I was living with my father at the time. In my first year, and I remember I knew for sure that I could not tell him I'm pregnant, nor could I tell him how it happened, because knowing my father, it wasn't even going to be, oh my gosh, you got raped, this is what we're going to do. also, oh, that's what I thought. And that's what happens when you're disconnected to your children.
Right. You assumed what he was going to say.
Based on what he showed me and what I perceived of him. I didn't think he would be supportive of me or even protect me in any way. And I asked a friend in varsity, and she said she had one when she was much younger. And then I went to a actual hospital to try to get one without anybody knowing. And I was treated so horribly. At the hospital. Yeah, public hospital, almost like I was an annoying person. I shouldn't be there. Or I was this naughty child. Why am I there? Nobody even asked, so young, what happened? Nobody. There was no one who said, can we help? Well, how did you get pregnant? All I got was just nurses speaking really horribly towards me and telling me to come back at a date where I'd already be showing. And I knew for sure that, but by this time, this fetus will be kicking and screaming. Yeah, I just can't do this.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up having an unsafe, illegal termination. Some of these clinics are people who actually do terminations, that you will have a clinic that does a termination, but whether the actual doctor is not there, the nurses do it for their own pocket.
Got it.
Behind the scenes kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in my life. It was uncared for. I felt unsupported. Even after the termination, I just felt so discarded. It was just like out with the old, in with the next. Let's go. We're doing business here. Let's keep moving. And according to my cousin who went there with me, she said it was very short. But for me, that whole process of them, whatever they were doing, they didn't even explain. With medical things, you're supposed to tell someone what's happening to their body, what's going to happen, what they should expect. And they're supposed to feel cared for. It's a medical procedure. But that didn't happen for me. And it just felt so long. And I even got an infection after, because it seems the equipment was sterile. That's why it's very important to not just call it illegal, but to call it unsafe. And unsafe means could be fatal. So I had an infection, but luckily I survived that infection. And I think for 3 years after that, I just carried the guilt. I felt like I was never going to be a mom. I didn't deserve to be a mom. I held on to the stigma, because growing up, all I ever heard about with young girls or women who had termination was gossip. Not so good gossip. I always overheard either older women or other older girls or anybody in the community talking about it, like, it's a gossip thing.
Yeah.
This ugly thing.
Yeah.
And this girl walks around the neighborhood with so much shame because it's like a known secret. So for me, I held on to that, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I can't tell anybody. My cousin knew, but held to so much guilt that I even thought I couldn't have children at some point. It was so painful that, when you have phantom pain,
yes,
like I would think of it and
Yeah.
feel that pain.
Yeah.
And that's how I knew I was not healed.
Yeah.
Years later, I was in my third year, I think, and I went to the seminar at varsity where they were talking about abortion as if it's something empowering. And I was sitting there like, what? There were these academics and women I really respected at Wits, and they were so amazing the way they were talking about it. I was like, what world am I living in? And they were talking about how to make it more progressive and accessible, and I was sitting there like, so what happened to me was actually quite unconstitutional. And that's how I started the journey of opening up about my termination. And I founded what we now call Abortion Support South Africa, that offers telemedical abortion services for up to 10 weeks. We work with pharmacies to provide the service, and we launched it in February. But as an organization, we've been in existence since 2016. So just the point is to refer people to the right places.
Right. Just say it again clearly so that when
Abortion Support South Africa, and we operate as a telemedical abortion referral service.
Okay. So is it an acronym ASA?
ASA, yeah.
ASSA.
Yeah. So we are on every social media network. People can message us. You can email us.
Yeah.
And before 10 weeks, we can help you actually get the pills for 180 Rand, whereas it costs so much more elsewhere.
Yeah.
Over 10 weeks, we will try to get you to a clinic that will really care for you. And for me, it was because after I shared my story publicly, so many women came to me for help. And I thought abortion is legal in South Africa, but accessibility is not there.
Right.
Either people are dying, they are being scarred for life because of something that shouldn't do that to them. And then what happens next? So there must be a way that we can assist. So yeah, we are colleagues with Mary Stokes and others.
Yes. That's amazing.
Thank you.
It really is. You know what, sort of took me aback in when you were talking about this is when you were at that lecture or seminar rather, and it kind of like hits you that you've been thinking of this in a very different way. Can you share a little bit about what was your mentality before that seminar and then what changed?
Yeah, I think my mentality before the seminar was that what I had done was murder.
Yeah.
It was wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why I held on to the guilt, and that if people knew, it said something about my character, that I was irresponsible, promiscuous, if I didn't even say hi to that person who took advantage of me. That should have never happened. So I had this self-loathing. And when I got to the seminar, I found out that what I did was a decision regarding my own life. And I found out that abortions can actually save lives depending on where you are in your life. I found that I have bodily autonomy. And for the longest time, I didn't know what that meant or what that looked like. First of all, because remember, somebody had taken that away from me by raping me. And then number two, I had a termination and I didn't see it as something that had to do with bodily autonomy. And that's how Abortion Support South Africa was founded, was because I felt completely failed by the system.
Yeah.
Selena.
Yeah.
I felt like as a 19-year-old woman at my age, the law says if I require a termination of pregnancy, I should be able to.
Right.
And an institution that's unable to get it for me should refer me to one that does. I didn't even know this, but South Africa, abortion is the only medical procedure in the country that has its own act away from the entire constitution. It sits on its own.
Okay.
The choice of termination of abortion act sits on its own. And if you read that, it's quite progressive. And I didn't even know until then. So that type of research healed me to a point where that phantom pain, it went away, because then I started focusing on the facts, and I started focusing on the fact that, hey, you're one of the girls who had an unsafe termination, who could have went septic and died, but you lived to tell the tale.
Yeah.
And you cannot shut up. You cannot be quiet.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Oh, I don't know if this is something that you, because obviously it is trauma.
Yeah.
And you said that you've healed or you are healing from it. Are you comfortable sharing what actually happened? Because again, as I mentioned earlier, all I have seen or heard about abortion is very similar to you, where it's like hush hush. You do it in like the back alley or somewhere. And the only sort of stories that are told are on TV, in movies. Honestly, the first time that I have seen a medical abortion, a legal one happening on screen, was on Grey's Anatomy recently. And they did a great job at like showing a completely different side to it. It was very calm. It was very compassionate.
Yeah.
You know, the doctors were like, they didn't even ask the woman, why you have an abortion? You know, like not in a way that they didn't care, but more like, she knows herself. She knows her body. And she has made this decision. We know it's not like lightly.
Yeah.
It was done in a very respectful way. I'm curious, and I know that a lot of other women, especially those who don't believe that it's right, and I put that in quotes, for a woman to have a termination under any circumstances. Can you take us through a little bit of what actually happened?
Yeah, like during the procedure.
Yeah. Did you get any pre-counseling? You mentioned that during the procedure you didn't get any, and then afterwards, but what are the sort of steps that you took, and what ended up happening?
I think I should start you at the rejection from the public facility.
Yeah.
That's the first trauma.
Yeah.
It's that you're rejecting me, but you're supposed to help me. That's the first rejection I got. So you can imagine that psychological impact from that.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next step was going to this clinic, being told, come tomorrow, have pads. That's it. Nothing else. Second of all, you're nervous. All you know about abortions is all these myths that are out there that they can remove your uterus. And it was before I was very like a Google person like I am now. So I didn't really have the resources or time to like research what was happening. I just literally just rocked up, and it was a matter of if I die, I die. Before that was a thing we used. And when you get there, there's just a queue. And in the queue, there's women of different ages. I remember there was a woman who looked much older than all of us who were there, and she was alone. Then there was this child with her mother. And I think she had already taken the pills, and she was unraveling all over the floor, and that was scary. Now you're sitting in this queue and there are people inside. It's almost like if you go into the labor ward, it's almost similar where you can hear others screaming. So we were hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there with my cousin, and I'm hearing other women screaming on the others, and I'm thinking, should I do this? Now I'm like really questioning myself. Should I go ahead? No, but I can't keep this. Also because I felt so depressed being pregnant. It was like, I want this to go. I didn't want it.
And you were how many weeks by then?
I think I was about 8 or something.
Yeah.
I was before 10.
Yeah.
Like about 8 or something like that. And then when I go in, there's this bucket of almost like clots. And first of all, you're thinking, are those the thing they were taking out of others? The room really stinks. Doesn't smell really good. And you don't really know whether they cleaned for the other person or not. There were 2 nurses. That's why I'm assuming that place, they do this. It's just that they were doing it without authorization.
Gotcha.
And then because they needed money, we were too many. So I had to rush us, right?
Right.
So now they're talking amongst each other. They're not talking to you. They just put you in the bed. They put your legs up on, I can't remember what the word is.
Those stirrups?
Stirrups.
So like in the gynae's office.
They put your legs on those. But they don't discuss anything.
Yeah.
They just tell you to shut up and sit there.
And so what are they talking about?
I think they were speaking in Zulu, and at the time I didn't really understand it. I didn't really understand it as much, but they were gossiping about something that happened over the week. Nothing.
Yeah.
But they had offered me a pill before I went in.
Okay.
So you get a bit of cramps, and then you go to the toilet, and then they tell you that if you see blood, it's your turn. So once the blood starts, and the blood is quite fresh blood, it's like very pinkish.
Yeah.
It's like really fresh. Then they tell you that the lady at reception tells you once you start bleeding, just let her know because then it means it's your turn.
Okay.
So then I went in, and then while I was in, while they were putting all those things, they're having a conversation. And I'm just sitting there like, what's happening? You know? And they insert something inside my vagina, and it just feels like some metal thing inside of me.
Yeah.
Just feels, but then that small little thing, after she puts it in and I can feel it like in my uterus, it's almost like she's grinding. It almost felt like something was being detached from my body. Like part of me was taken out of my body.
Yeah.
But I could feel everything.
Yeah.
It's like surgery, but you can feel it.
So they didn't give you any kind of like painkillers or nothing?
No. Apparently it's called a vacuum aspirator.
Yeah.
And then they just keep drilling and drilling and drilling. And I'm screaming and I'm trying to hold this woman so that she can tell that woman to stop. But they're just looking at me like, fam, no, we're not stopping. We've already started.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I just gave up on crying and screaming. And I just laid there until she was done. But it was very, very painful. I mean, I've been through labor and that was really, really sore.
Yeah.
That was different. It was a pain I can't even explain. And as I'm saying to you, I would have that phantom pains. And once they were done, it just felt like I'm raw. Like I just gave birth. But in the most, something went inside and just chewed me up. That's how it felt. And then they tell you to go to the next room and lie on your tummy.
Yeah.
But then you feel like lying there for a very long time. But then in like 10 minutes, they're like, you need to go. Someone else needs to take the bed. And at that time, you're so weak and you're bleeding. And then you have to dress and walk out of there. And me and my cousin, we had to take a taxi. And I think we got home and I had some painkillers and I slept. I don't know how long I slept for. The next day when I woke up, it was almost as if whatever's coming out of me is mixed with pus or something.
Yeah.
It looked different.
Yeah.
And the cramps were back and I was feverish and I was sweaty. And she then called, luckily they answered. She called them back. That's how to say, probably in the legit clinic, they're just doing it their own thing on the side. And then they don't clean up the stuff properly because they're in a rush.
Yeah.
They don't want to be caught or something. And they just said, just get her painkillers or something, she'll be fine. But I ended up going to an actual doctor who gave me antibiotics. And she just said, no, it seems like something foreign entered your uterus, but we're going to clean it out with antibiotics. Please strictly take it. I had to tell the doctor the truth that I've had a termination. This is where I had it. It's just like, I'm glad you came now because some people wait weeks up to weeks and then it's either we have to remove your entire uterus or you die. She gave me enough medication and I recovered. And I remember for a while, I doubt I'll have children. And I think it was in my third year before I had my son. I had a boyfriend who was like, you're so worried about this. Let's just go see a gynecologist. And I remember I was so nervous when I got to that gynecologist office that she's going to look at my uterus and think, oh my gosh, everything is immense. I think the first thing she said when she put her thing in there, she's like, you're so beautiful. Just like yours, the babies that I need to come out of it. And I was like, I cried. Because I thought they ruined me or something. And I was so emotional. And I think for me, that was also the first step of just the healing journey.
Yeah.
And feeling like I don't ever want any young woman, especially because it happens to young women, to ever go through what I went through.
Yeah. And also the idea, because like now I'm listening to your story and I can really just, I can't even imagine. I know it's like, I can't find the words to, because there's the trauma of your rape. And now there's this additional trauma of this,
Because I had to forget about the rape. I had to focus on this.
Yeah. And the fact that no one held your hand through that. I mean, your cousin was there.
She was as young as me. She didn't even know it was happening.
Yeah, but no one who was put in a position of authority, of, caretaking, was, able to sort of like you said, sit you down and actually ask, what happened to you? And why have you come to this decision? Is there something we can do to help? So when did your dad must know, because you're so active and you're so vocal about this online, when did you start telling your family and other people the story?
My dad actually passed away in 2012. It was way before my activism. And I think part of the reason I'm also confident to speak now is because it sounds weird, but he's not here, so I don't have to fight with him about it. But I don't know how he would have responded to me, because by the time he died, he already started seeing me become active in a lot of issues already. But I hadn't started sharing. I started really sharing in 2016.
Okay.
I was a mom then, and my son was born in 2014. Becoming a mom also made it really important to me that motherhood becomes a choice. And that's also the reason why I decided it actually encouraged me to share some more, because I became a mom and I was like, what? This is what we have to go through? And people want to force us to go through this.
Yes.
So I was supposed to carry a pregnancy and didn't want, for the sake of what, novelty, because we assume it's going to be a president or something of that sort. And I became a mom and I saw the amount of work that comes with that and the amount of self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
Sacrificing your body. I mean, I breastfed my son for 2 years, sacrificing your dreams, your career, your life. My life completely changed when I became a mom. And I thought to myself, no, motherhood should definitely be a choice. Nobody should be forced just because they felt pregnant to keep that pregnancy. But if you have other kids that still need you, and it happened, because pregnancy happens, or what if you were raped, or what if, it doesn't matter really what the reasons are. The reason is, if you want determination, there must be something that is compelling you to want determination. And me being a mom said to me, I need to talk about this. I need to talk about why people deserve abortions that are respected, cared for, and where they feel empowered instead of disempowered and put down.
I think that's the thing. Like, I feel like the topic of abortion is so multi-layered. And I mean, you have the religious aspect. And when I say religious, I'm covering most religions. They all have their opinions, guidelines, or whatever on abortions. So you have that layer. Then you have societal pressures and opinions. But then you have those people who are very much like, I am pro-life unless she's been raped. Then I can understand. It's almost like picking and choosing in a way, that when is it okay?
Yeah.
When is it okay for a woman to have an abortion? And then when is it not? What I've always, and especially in the news with Roe versus Wade, the overturn of that, I think for me, I struggle to understand why it is such an issue for other people. If a woman, especially a woman who they don't know her circumstances, they don't know what led to the pregnancy, what led to her decision for the abortion, but they're so adamantly against it. Did you find that kind of resistance when you started speaking up about your abortion?
I did. Yeah. And I think with the organization, I've been called many things.
Yeah.
I listened to what you were saying and how you were saying that, people don't know, this woman don't know. But think about it, Aisha, it's with everything that I do.
Yeah.
It's with everything. So with determination, it's because people like to say, no, it's about the life that's in you. Yeah. But what people don't want to admit, it's that underlying that, it's the fact that they really feel like we should be baby making.
And that's it.
And that's it. People don't want to admit that they see us as vessels, not people.
Yes.
Even in the way that, I always say on my Instagram that I have a love and hate relationship with motherhood. Yeah. Because motherhood, as encapsulated by society, actually just means self-sacrifice and leaving all your dreams aside and just being everything to your children. Like, oh my gosh, a mother's love is no other love. Like, we're not complex. Like, we are complicated. Like, we can't have wars with our children, drama with our children, you know? Because that happens. We're human. We're complex people. But at the bottom of it all is that society does not see women as people. And that's why, for me, whether you're a mother or not a mother, women always have to stand in solidarity with each other, because either way, society doesn't respect what we want to wear. Society doesn't respect how we want to live our lives. All of a sudden, there's this thing about masculine energy because we want to be empowered and have resources, want to have a voice. Yeah. We can't have resources. We can't have a voice. So I think for me, now with termination of pregnancy, I think what adds to it being such a big factor where you see people at outside abortion clinics with placards, especially in America, because now there's a religious aspect to it. Yeah. And now they can use that to they can clear their conscience for what they're doing. It seems like a noble cause, it seems. And I'm always told, women who come to me and they're like, I'm a Christian and I want to do this. And I'm like, I'm never ever going to tell you that your religion is wrong, because that's not my place. I'm going to tell you that from what I know, God forgives. And Jesus already died for your sins. So whatever you choose to do, don't listen to people. Listen to what your religion says. Whatever is helpful to you in your healing journey as well. I'm not going to say to you, no, leave the church. They hate you because of... I would never say that. Yeah. But what I will say to you is, at the heart of your religion is love. Hang on to that. But at the bottom of everything, it's also a pregnancy is not guaranteed, and that's what people don't understand. I just want to share this quickly because I think it's important. I think it was 2017. Yeah. A mother came to me and her 16-year-old had gotten pregnant. Luckily, it wasn't rape. It was a teenage thing that the boy was also young, and you know, this thing of not having sex talk with your kids, and she was really struggling with the idea of termination. Who was struggling? The mom. You know, okay. And it being a sin, and because of her religion. And I understood how convicted she was, and I tried to support her as much as I could. The child ended up going ahead with the pregnancy. And the mom was like, no, we're going to support her. We're going to buy baby stuff. We're going to be there. And I was like, I mean, I wouldn't choose for you. I don't know what your daughter wants. It's up to you. And she came back to me months later and said, my child died during labor. And she felt like she killed a child. Oh my God. And I said to her, I had to hold her through it as well, because I understood how complex it was for her as an African woman. Yeah. Who grew up in an African church. And, you know, these are the stories that she was doing the right thing. She thought she was doing the right thing. But also you can't tell, because you believe people go to labor wards every day, but complications happen. Yeah. And unfortunately, all she got back was her granddaughter. And I said to her, your daughter has given you a daughter now. You get another chance, not the same child. I'm not saying we are replacing your child, but those are the stories that people don't hear about. That's why I do the work I do. Another one that people don't get to hear about, a mom of about, I think she had 3 kids. Yeah. Unemployed, living at home. You can imagine she's already been told, oh my gosh, you will end up as nothing. Look at you, busy having kids. She already has that trauma of feeling like a burden. Yeah. Because she has 3 kids already. She has no job. The father is not really as present. She lives in poverty. She gets pregnant, and she came to me quite late. So she texts me on Facebook. She doesn't text the organization's page. She texts me directly. Yeah. I went to this guy, I've got abortion pills, and I'm in my room, and the baby's head is out, but the whole body's not coming out, and I don't know what to do. And I said to her, where's everybody else? And she said, they're in the other rooms. But you're going to bleed to death. You need to get help. They're going to judge me. I'm like, your life is way more than people judging you. And that was because of an unsafe abortion. I had to walk her through getting help and saying to her, I would rather you live and be talented than your kids lose you because you're afraid of being judged. But this woman was willing to risk bleeding to death because of fear of being told she's useless. Yeah. Here she is again. Here she's doing this thing again. And now here she is because she went to a backdoor thing and it was already too late. And she was mocked. You know, when she did get help and she did get to the hospital, she was mocked. She wasn't cared for. That's what women go through. And I think for me, that's why I do what I do. It's because these are the stories. A lot of people are silent about what they go through. And hospitals are not going to tell us how many women are dying each year because of failed terminations. So this is why I do what I do. And this is why I believe that motherhood should be a choice, because I feel like, especially in this country, a lot of women don't get to choose. Yeah. Some women live in situations where they can't negotiate condom use with their partners, even their husbands, because of the legacy of gender-based violence. And these are the realities that we have to face. Not every woman is as empowered as how, if I had to get pregnant tomorrow, I know if I'm not ready what I would do. Another woman doesn't have that. Yeah, this is why I do what I do. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm glad you touched on that, because a lot of people, and I've had that in my TMs. I don't really talk about abortion so much like on my platform, as I don't talk about a lot of other issues. But there are one or two times that I've maybe reposted a post, and I recently posted or reposted someone the photo was of these, protesters outside an abortion clinic and stuff, but it was actually women who were pro-choice, holding the placards. And it said something, I'm paraphrasing here, it said something like, you know what else prevents pregnancies? Vasectomy. Snip, snip, and I was just like, yes, that's what it's about. And so I reposted that, and just by me reposting it, I got quite a few messages and people, really trying to impose, saying, no, but either way, it's not right. You can't tell me that just if men got vasectomies, then we wouldn't have abortion problem. I'm like, no, I'm not saying that it would completely cancel it, but it will help. Because at the end of the day, the problem with society is that they're placing the entire responsibility of conception and, procreation on us as women. We can't get pregnant on our own. Where are the men in this?
And someone once said that if men were the ones who needed abortion, we wouldn't
be in this situation.
The access would be
crazy. If men needed abortions, if men gave birth, we wouldn't have the issues, as many birth, some birth complications are unavoidable, but some aren't. And that's just due to negligence on the medical staff, or, we could write a book on that. So, how you're talking about now, there are circumstances, and I'd love for you to maybe just elaborate a little bit on that, just for those people who still think that every woman is as empowered, educated, self-assured, as whatever, other adjective it is, to be able to tell her partner, whether it's her husband or boyfriend, or unfortunately somebody who is raping her, please wear a condom. I'm not on any contraception. I might get pregnant. There's so many other situations and scenarios where a woman will get pregnant against her will. Can you share a couple more of those?
The challenge about living in South Africa is that the inequality is so great that we can both live in South Africa but have completely different reality. Right?
Yes.
That's what we're fighting more than we're fighting just poverty in South Africa. And what inequality does is that it creates a situation where some of us live in bubbles.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that in so many corners of this country, there are so many women who don't have access to those contraceptives that you're telling us to go eat all the time, that you're bashing down our throat, where clinics are under-resourced. They don't have the correct resources or the nurses, right? Those places exist. People think contraceptives are way more than available.
Yeah.
Also, some women don't have the same nutrition as you to take the contraceptive that you want them to take. It goes with nutrition. It goes with lifestyle. It goes with what you drink, what you eat. There are people in this country who don't get the same amount of food that you get and the same nutrition you get. It's the same with breastfeeding.
Yeah.
For some reason, we understand it when it comes to breastfeeding, but we don't understand it when it comes to, contraceptives.
Yeah.
But there are women in this country who have no choice but to depend on men, whether it's their father, their uncle, their partner.
Yeah.
Right? There are many women who can't speak up to their husbands, who can't say a thing. There are many women who are so disempowered that their self-worth depends on a man.
Yeah.
Because of the history that we come from. We only talk about the history of apartheid and its legacy. We hardly talk about the legacy of gender-based violence and how it has affected and impacted on women as years go by. There was a time where I was mugged, and how they neutralized me was by touching my breasts.
Yeah.
Because they know that my body is their war zone, and they can play around to make me fear, right? But what I'm trying to communicate here is that not all of us are as empowered in our homes. Not all of us can say to our husbands, no, I'd like to use a condom. Not all of us can walk down the street and not be taken advantage of. Not all of us can apply for a job and not be asked for sex first, and raw sex, that is. We don't all have these. And for me, the thing is, with people who don't believe abortion should happen, my thing is always, you don't have to believe in abortion for you.
Yeah.
What you need to know is that they will happen, whether you believe in them or not, and whether they're legal or not. The question is, do you want the people who go through them to suffer, to die, or do you want them to go through them in a healthy and supported way? That's what intersectionality encourages of me as a feminist to see other women and see their realities outside of my own, and not just base everything and my views on my life. But also there's abortion that saves lives. There are pregnancies that could kill other women. Yeah. And when you say termination in its entirety must not be allowed, you're putting those women at risk. For what? For a belief, And we should never allow men to make decisions about our bodies. If you live in South Africa, know that there's people facing things that you wouldn't imagine in 2023.
I think that's so key. What you just said now is this idea, and I think a lot of it comes from, I would never have an abortion. It's like, okay, so don't. But that doesn't mean that somebody else shouldn't have the right to choose to have an abortion or not.
Handle from Kaelicha, who just got accepted at UCT.
Yeah.
It's her family's first person to ever go to varsity.
Yeah.
There are 10 other people looking up to Tando to ensure that she graduates. Tando meets love for the first time at varsity. Tando doesn't know much about contraceptives and sex. Tando gets pregnant.
No one spoke to her. Yeah.
Tando gets pregnant, and Tando, do you want all those 10 other people to suffer because Tando got pregnant? Because Tando's choosing. If Tando's saying, no, I'll carry the pregnancy and feed all of them, but Tando's saying, I can't. I have too many. My NAFSA's money is already, and then people say, no, but don't have sex. That is dehumanizing. We should call for a systematic support. We should call for schools to educate on sex. We should call for schools to educate on condoms. We should call for these contraceptives to be available, to be healthy. It's layered. It's systematic. Like you can't leave one side behind. And that's why for me, do not take abortion away from family planning. It's part of it.
And then you also have an even more unspoken about aspect of that. Now you're saying like the family planning part. You have married couples. Yeah. Couples who, I'll put in air quotes, supposed to have children. They're supposedly supposed to be ready for pregnancy at any time. But for whatever reason, and there's many, kids are expensive. Let's be real. As much as, yes, I also believe children are blessings and all of that, but they're not necessarily always going to come at a good set of time. Yeah. I think that a lot of people remove all of these other factors that make up a good upbringing.
Yeah.
For parents to actually successfully raise a child. There is the financial aspect. There's obviously the mental aspect of it. You have to give a lot, like you were saying earlier. It is very demanding physically. It's very demanding emotionally. Do you have all of those things in place? And I think people just assume if you're married, then you do. But a lot of women are in abusive marriages. A lot of women are, in marriages where maybe the husband is the only breadwinner and they already have 5 kids. It is really multi-layered.
It's people saying, take responsibility for your actions.
What about the
termination? But also, choosing to terminate is how much more responsibility do you need to take? It's the same thing as how people will say, oh, but single mothers complain too much, they must take responsibility. Raising a kid alone is taking responsibility. Yes. Going to an abortion clinic, standing. How is that the easy way out? Why do you call it, and why shouldn't women have an easy way out? Yes. Why should it always be difficult?
Yes.
Why should it be hard? So those are the type of things that Tando is taking responsibility. And that's why whenever young women come to me and say, I decided to have an abortion and then I just needed to tell someone, my first thing is always, I'm so proud of you. Because nobody's ever going to say that to me. Yeah. People are just going to be, are you sure? What does God say? Or what does your mom? I always start by saying, I am so proud. And that just brings them to tears because it's like they know who will say I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge thing.
It's massive
to decide.
Yeah.
Because you don't even know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's your body.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying.
But also the whole thing of like, okay, say I took responsibility and now I am having this baby. I don't want this baby for whatever reason. Yeah, I don't want this baby. I can't afford to take care of this child. Even if I'm disciplined enough to not ever utter the words, I didn't want you or I was not ready for you, that child is going to feel that growing up. That's always my question for people who are like, if you're already pregnant, you should keep the child. Okay. What happens to the child when the mother delivers? Oh, you can give it up for adoption. Okay. But there's a lot of children, up for adoption. A lot of children don't end up getting adopted. It's not like a magical thing that people are just handing out babies.
You're not guaranteed that they're going to have a great life.
That too. What happens? Because it's not
Those people are queuing.
Exactly.
I wrote an article about how I resented my son, and I think that's one of the sort of stories that people never talk about.
That too.
Of how I got to a point of like, I was like, what? This is my life.
Yeah.
I chose this. Yeah. And I wrote that because I know that a lot of mothers feel it.
Yes.
But don't talk about it. And for me, it's also that I want to validate that we do go through a process of resenting our children, some of us. Not everybody just falls in love with their kid the minute they born. Yeah. I did. I mean, the first day was nice. But later when I then became a single mom, because I was a single mom for a while after giving birth, because his dad was a no-show for a while, he came back into our lives. But during that period that I had no support, I resented my child. And because I had nobody to process that with me, I took it all out on my child. And that's how today I became the conscious parent I am. And I want mothers to know that you can heal from that. And we don't talk about it enough. And that's what you're talking about. It's because most mothers won't be able to admit that actually I don't want this. Yeah. And it's not that you don't love your child or you don't like the child. It's the circumstances.
There's the circumstances. And also, are you going to be there? Those people who are anti-abortion, are you going to be there for the mother if she goes ahead and has this baby? Has society put in those support structures to support the moms who didn't want the baby, but because of law, because of whatever pressure, they went ahead and had the baby? I feel, as with all moms, whether they will consider abortion or not, or whether they plan to have the baby, I honestly feel that the majority of the times you give birth and you are on your own.
Absolutely.
You're on your own. You are lucky if you have a supportive, involved partner / husband, parents who are there to support you if you're having a bad day, if you're sick.
If I was going to war children with.
Exactly. Like, where are all of these
they don't
points
of some lot of answers? And you should see that on my TikTok. I mean, it's all over my TikTok. I talk about these issues and mothers just pour themselves out that I'm tired, that I'm struggling, that I'm alone. And that's the other thing, is nobody's queuing up to change policies that are pro-parents,
right,
or systematic support. I remember there was a mother who asked me a very good question. It was like, you talk about all this nice parenting and listening to our kids, but where's the support? How do we try to when I'm quiet? And I said, you're right, you're correct. And I talk about it in the midst of understanding that even me, I suffer from depression. Even me, I go through unemployment. I'm unemployed now. Mothers are facing racism, housing issues. Some are getting raped at work. All of these kinds of things, and we're still expected to perform miracles in our own homes
and raise healthy, well-adjusted children
who don't misbehave in public. Like, they should not have a tantrum.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. I'm feeling so educated, and I'm feeling so grateful to you for sharing your story. I know it's going to be helping so many women.
I hope so.
Yeah, it will.
I hope it will. Yeah.
So, what is your whole mama truth?
My whole mama truth is that motherhood should be a choice. And I'm proud of choosing not to be pregnant when I did not want to be.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I think of all the episodes we have put together this season, this one has definitely been the most hard-hitting. And I say that because there were so many things about Hao's story that I had never heard of. When you hear about abortion, or you hear about pro-life, pro-choice, it feels very almost just straightforward, when in reality, it's hardly ever the case. And I really, really appreciate that Hao is not just passionate about sharing her story on her platforms, but she came here to share hers here as well. My mission with this podcast always has been and always will be to share the untold stories of a motherhood. So let me know your thoughts, but please keep them respectful. I do believe that we can have a healthy discussion around this very sensitive topic and respect other people's opinions. I thank you for listening. Please go ahead and subscribe to my channel and follow me on my social media platforms, and use this time to watch another episode of The Whole Mama Show. I'm Aisha O'Reilly, and I hope this episode has left you feeling a little bit more whole, Mama.